saying,
Madame. How are
Good to
you?
see
Lovely
you.
to see you
Doing
again.
well. Yeah, hanging in there.
Indeed. Indeed, it's nice to see you. Welcome, everybody. Nice to see you all. And certainly looking forward to today's show, Jess. I mean, there's been a lot of so much signaling.
Yeah.
And it's so blatant and in our eyes. It's not even glamorous anymore, in my opinion. You know, at least when you go back to the 70s and 80s, the women were really dressing beautifully, you know, like fairy tale princesses, even though, yes, I'm sure they were still signaling to wherever they can and whoever they can. But at least they did so with a sense of femininity and grace. That's the way I see it. You know, right now, all of that is gone, or so much of that is gone. I can't say all.
Yeah. I mean, this is huge what we're seeing right now. And I don't think many really understand the fullness of everything that we're seeing. You know, let's start with prayer and then we're going to get into it because it's going to expand into next week as well as to what we're covering. But Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day. We thank you for this time to come together. We thank you that we are no longer naive to the evil plots of the enemy or the things that he tries to do in hidden or secret ways, Lord. We thank you that you are teaching us to be able to see, to be able to understand, and to know what the enemy is communicating amongst themselves. And we ask, Father God, that as we go through these decodes, that you would give us a new authority over our regions, over our quadrants. And we ask, Lord, that you would protect the children of our nations, Lord. We are not like those that sit back and let the enemy come and stick his hand in the nest and take all the eggs. No, we will stand in the gap and we say no more stealing or harming of the children. In your name we pray, Jesus. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Jessie.
Yeah.
Well, before we go ahead with the show, sorry, is there anything you maybe just want to announce? Anything you're doing? All of your delightful things?
Yeah, absolutely. I encourage people. I've got a lot of new things coming up starting this next week, starting Sunday the 15th through the 21st, every evening from 5 to 6 p.m. I'm going to be doing a call to prayer, and people can come join me for that. And we're going to focus on just praying through for a passion for the Lord. Then February 17th at 10 a.m. till noon, I've got the next international land assignment. And we're going to be going through decoding the coat of arms for Ireland, Dublin, Switzerland, Tours France, and a few other places. Then I've got coming up the next month, the 12th and the 19th, I have the Queen of Heaven workshop, which we've talked about. And that's going to be a massive decode, learning how to distinguish the different images that they use for Mary and what those images represent to them. And then I do have on February 20th, if anybody's interested, I have the Work of His Hand strategy group. And that's a group where we've been processing and going through different things in our lives. You know, it's going to be all the way from diet, health, exercise to, you know, spiritual things in your life, to parenting, relationships, to business, ministry, whatever you have to work on. The Lord is really kind of stirring people to kind of pull out the height, the depth, the breadth, and the width of the good works that he desires to do through us. So we're, you know, processing, getting creative ideas, looking at different ways we can present things, market things, you know, encapsulate them, whatever you want to call it. But so that's coming up February 20th in the evening, and you can register for that on kingdomlivingwithjessie.com.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Got a lot going on. And of course, if any of you missed that, there is Jessie's details at the bottom of the screen. So I look forward to hearing about today, the decodes and stuff, right?
Yeah.
Lots going on, as we were saying.
There is. So we'll give kind of a spectrum across the board before we get into the decodes here so we can see and understand what is happening. In the past years, we've talked about how different events, the Grammys, the Super Bowls, the Oscars, all of those can be used as means for those in the brotherhood and the sovereign military to declare themselves, meaning that, you know, as they enter into the brotherhood and sovereign military, they're going to join circle groups. They're going to be part of these magical groups. As they gain or go through their degrees of illumination, they're going to be given the opportunity for more authority, more power, and that can be regional or quadrantly. So the majority of the time, you know, your Grammys, your Super Bowls, your Oscars are used really for declaring those that are going for quadrant positions. And they will do it publicly right in front of our face. You know, they can even use big movie reveals, things like that. So in the past, we had talked about, you know, Sam Smith, how when he was doing the Grammys, you know, he presented himself a certain way. His performance definitely was very demonic. And you had individuals like Madonna dressed like a, you know, female Nazi supporting him. And you'll see that there'll be individuals that will all of a sudden, it's like they've got a new coming out, a new way of presenting themselves. And in that, they're going to show you their humanitarian efforts or their areas of focus. They're going to show you the quotas of evil that they're going to engage in, and they're going to show you their specs, their specialties, even sometimes their routes, where they're going to be doing, you know, or overseeing the evil that they do or the humanitarian efforts that they do. So it's important to watch for those things, that nothing in the symbology is just random. It's not coincidence. It's not just some neat design that they came up with for the show. You know, it's very specific. And when we don't understand what they're communicating, we just tend to kind of blow it off or shut it off or say, you know, we need to not watch that. But we do need to, you know, watch these things, because if we do, then we know exactly what they're doing. We know where they're doing it. And we need to start protecting our children. That's the biggest thing. You know, when we go through these decodes today, you're going to kind of be like, wait, what? You know, like, this is really scary, and we should be scared. We should be, you know, not scared where we're trembling and cowering behind the scenes. We need that fear to prompt a fear of the Lord that then pushes us to take action and to, you know, catch these individuals in their criminal activity. So some of the things that we're seeing across the board that may not have been recognized, you know, we see the Grammys coming out. You had, you know, Lady Gaga, Bad Bunny really highlighted in those. Then you have the Olympics happening at the same time in Italy, and had some special shows and performances there. At the same time, then we had the Super Bowl, and you had Bad Bunny and Lady Gaga again there. And then, kind of just off behind the scenes, hoping nobody would notice, while the Olympics are in Italy, we had Timothy M. Dolan, who is the cardinal out of New York area, who I've written about in my affidavits, who I witnessed abusing several boys, including Elon Musk and Saif Gaddafi, who just recently was murdered. You know, I witnessed him committing crimes against those boys at the Biltmore mansion in North Carolina. And anyway, Timothy M. Dolan has, you know, announced his retirement. But with that, they also raised up Ronald Hicks to his successor. And what was interesting is all of this stuff was happening, you know, that happening at the Vatican. And it just so happened to be Timothy M. Dolan's 76th birthday. So we know what happens with the elites around their birthday times. Then you add into it the mix of things that we see. And, you know, I would propose that there was more than 76 children sacrificed and massacred for, you know, the raising up of this Ronald Hicks. We're going to look at some of the things coming down the pipeline, including the Abracadabra song, and we'll get into the magic behind that and what that imagery means ritually and what that means about the sacrifice and the massacre that happened at the Vatican just this past week. So let's go ahead and we're going to get into it. There's a lot going on. So at the Grammys, we had several, you know, performances, several individuals kind of being highlighted, some of those connecting, you know, to the Wicked presentation or movie, which is for those who aren't fully aware of what that is a play, a script that was based off of the second book, Return to Oz, that was part of the series The Wizard of Oz. And it gets into the history of how the Wicked Witch became the Wicked Witch and how Glinda became the Good Witch. And, you know, so that's where that comes from. And we know that in the system, they use classic literature not only to identify certain underground places, like you have Emerald City that's under the Pentagon, and, you know, they're going to identify certain places, but they also use classic literature in regards to ritual seasons. You know, what type of rituals are they going to do? Who's being raised up? You know, and when you think of underground governance, the majority of all your underground cities, now there's kind of a difference. You have underground cities, you have underground military domes and bases, and you have underground, under the ocean, water cities. So they could be, you know, the ones under the water could be just under the water, or they could be under the ground, under the water. So several different classifications in that. But you know, you're going to get those areas, those territories. Their governance is usually structured in the underground water cities and the under the water city, or under the water underground. You get where they're going to structure it where you'll have either a high-level sorceress. Many times, you know, that sorceress could be called a sorceress. They could use a specific sorceress name, you know, like Morgana. They could use the term queen, but that you're going to have a queen or sorceress over the city. Then usually they'll have 3 high wizards, one that will be considered white, not in race or color, but you know, white is going to be light side. One will be considered black or dark side, and one will be gray, which will be neutral or skilled at both. So that's how your underground governance is. And so, we see kind of things at these times where they're declaring, and are they using these things to kind of clarify who, is taking over some of these underground places and the operations of them. So you have Wicked, you had the Demon Hunters, and you have Zaw with Kendrick Lamar. So those were some of the big performances. All right, let's go to the next one. And this is beginning scenes and images of Lady Gaga with her performance and her attire that she kind of was changing into there at the Grammys. And, she got a lot of stuff for her performance, Abracadabra. Now, the first thing I want to point out with this is the feathers. Feathers are highly used in the system to signify forms of magic, as well as familiar spirits, as well as transformational. We've talked about how witches can be shapeshifters and change, their shape and turn into different familiars or creatures. And so, your black feathers often are going to be connected to your ravens. Red feathers are often seen as a phoenix, or your firebird imagery, which could connect to Quetzalcoatl or some of your Mayan, Aztec, or Incan ancient bird gods. So when you think of this imagery, think of what entities are represented by that imagery, because at the end of the day, in order to be able to shapeshift or change, they're going to have to make a contract with certain entities. It's the spirit that enables them to do that and physically changes them. With this, there's also territories, though, that are marked out with the imagery. We see kind of like the helmet look, almost looking like a wide cage or like a dungeon, like an old dungeon furnace, and, representing different forms of infernal spirits and deep underground, which you get, some infernals connected to that. And, I think that that's what she's displaying, is she's stepping out now as not just, she's been a high priestess. We'll get into her training with Marina Abramovich in a moment. Both of them being initially under Gloria Vanderbilt. I encourage you, to go to timothycharleshomeseth.com, check out my affidavits on Gloria Vanderbilt and Biltmore. There's a lot there that will help you understand the type of training that Lady Gaga went through as a high priestess. And then, all of that gets into her now stepping into a position of more authority. And there's going to be some things that are going to come with that. So let's get into some more of this. Go ahead to the next one. So abracadabra is a very specific spell. And, just for anybody who might be worried or concerned, we're going to remove any authorities or permissions that come with that. I believe we can speak about it. The Lord is protecting us, and we don't need to be afraid. We're not summoning the spirit or anything. We fully stand against him, and we just are asking for that hedge of protection as we speak about these things. But abracadabra is a spirit, but more than a spirit, it's a legion of spirits as well. So he oversees a legion. So it's important to understand that when you're seeing the things that are coming down from Aleister Crowley, it's connected to the entity, his legion and demonic army that he oversees, and the specific things that they're going to require for worship in order for power. So some of that imagery that you'll see in connection with abracadabra is the upside down triangle. Now you see it here in this imagery. You see the kind of cane or staff that she's using with that, with using the bust of a woman that's been, you know, without limbs or anything, with, you know, what is it called? Barbed wire, like around it, in that shape of the upside down triangle. Now, this, and again, if people are sensitive, this might not be, you might just need to tune out for a little bit, but this episode's going to get really heavy and dark, because what's connected with the abracadabra is necromancy, using witchcraft in regards to the dead, as well as necrophilia, which means having sex with the dead. And, you know, where are they going to go and have, you know, their demonic revels, their sex with this demon, abracadabra? It's going to be among the dead. So they're not just going to, you know, be looking for people who are dying. They're also going to be doing horrific, grotesque things to individuals. And I really believe that the imagery that she's using in here is meant to be a blasphemy. It's meant to show that she's going to present things in a good light, but really, you know, that dark side, she's going to be, you know, engaging in things that are forbidden, things that are, you know, just beyond what we could imagine. And, you know, so the imagery, you know, you notice even her cross, all the heads on it, you know, a lot of their rituals and sacrifices in this are going to come with a desecration of the dead, and they desecrate the dead, meaning, you know, that they aren't just going to stop. They're going to do graphic and horrific things with the body and mutilate the bodies, you know, which shouldn't surprise us with her because of other things we've seen her engage in with Marina Abramovich. Let's go ahead to the next one. So this is just to kind of show that, you know, you've got on the one side, on the left side, you have the Kabbalah magic and form. And in your upper layers, Kabbalah is like part of their imagery. You have a right side up triangle. That right side up triangle bears the name of God in many different forms. You have Yahweh, you have other ways that this is their geometrical, mathematical proof of the existence of God. Just if you are questioning that, the real existence, like this is it. You have things that can mathematically prove that there is a God and that his name exists, and that because his name exists, we have a being, a real living being that we can call on who will respond and answer. So it gets really interesting when you look at that. But when you see that right side up triangle in the system, one of the layers of meanings connects back to the name of God and the things that they're going to do in the name of God. And mathematically, when they use this, you literally get all 72 names of God. So things like Yahweh, Yeshua, Yah, Jehovah, all of that, they're going to have all of that in here, all the names of God. So what happened then on the right side, what we see is abracadabra. And we see it in two forms, just as we see the name of God in two forms. The upper one, you know, showing us more from the star form imagery versus the triangle. So you also see, in the seal of Kabbalah, the right side up and upside down triangle forming that seal of Israel, which was the seal of Solomon as well. You see the abracadabra spell written out, and then you see it written out in its triangle form, and how it's the opposite imagery wise of the name of God. And with this, when you have that name abracadabra, that spirit has, kind of a connection, a doorway through the underground, where when they call on him, it opens up their access to all 72 spirits named in the keys of Solomon. So this is, when they're wanting to, work the darkest magic, go into the deepest, darkest infernal layers, walking among the dead and raising up a dead army, when they get into their studies in the Egyptian ancient arts and the mummification, their purpose in that is literally to, they believe that they will bring the dead back to life as a dead army, whether that's mummies, zombies, and they have been collecting bodies in certain places that they intend to raise up in the end times. So this spell is highly connected to that. And let's go to the next one. We're going to get into some of the locations where that is and where these things happen. Go ahead to the next one there. So, we see her imagery, we see things beginning to shift, we see change, we see a lot of, your high sorceress type look where you've got, the high level collars, the feathers here, we've seen feathers that look like, raven, we've seen the feathers that look like the phoenix, but you have other ancient gods that are connected to, with feathers, and that includes Hennet and others. But with that, you're going to also, as they get into the Egyptian studies and putting themselves under these ancient deities, they believe that they're taking on the power of these deities and that they're getting the authority of these deities. They believe that they are, gods in these deities' images. And, I believe that that's what she's beginning to display is the things that she's connecting to. And let's go ahead to the next one. So, her, everything that she's doing, her presentation of herself at these Grammys and at these different major events, she's declaring, showing what she's going to have authority over. So the two, and this is not exclusive. There are many, many more places. I'm just going to address the largest two for today, where you have the training of the hierarchy children in necromancy and in necrophilia. Both your Jackal Island and Antarctica are going to have underground military bases. And both of these areas were under the jurisdiction of Department of Defense, our former Department of Defense leader, Colonel Michael Aquino. And so anyway, what does that training include? They're going to have things like, access to the dead. I've talked about how there's places like Emerald City is one of those where you have a vault, what they're going to call a vault of the forefathers. So vaults of the forefathers are places where they collect high-level members' bodies, heads, body parts, brains. Many of your Masons that are higher level, that's going to be above 33 degree. It doesn't mean they're not going to keep some 33rd degree people, but most of them are higher than 33rd degree. But they're going to keep, portions of them so that they can, they believe that that gives them access to the dead and to their soul. And many times they will preserve them before they actually die. So like you see things like Walt Disney being cryogenically frozen. They have cryogenics, they have some of the older methods, the older vaults are going to contain where they've preserved body or body parts, the head, the brain in formaldehyde. And tinctures that are made to preserve. So you're going to get a variety of things, but so that's one part of these, is that there's going to be a connection with Emerald City, with the vaults of the forefathers. You're going to get seances, different things that they're going to do to communicate with those dead, in order to, gain visions of end time things, or gain knowledge, or gain access to spirits that those people were bound by or connected to. The other thing, it's not all exclusive to humans. So there are, creatures, there are, I'll just say, beings that they're going to have. Jackal Island is going to have quite a mix. And you get some of your connections to Jackal Island going to horrific, kind of horror classic literature like Jackal and Dr. Hyde. And that, when you look at that book, you get into grotesque experimentation, laboratories, things like that. So Jackal Island is one of those, that base includes a massive lab where horrific things like that happen. And this is stuff, Nightmare does not even begin to describe the things that children are going to witness or experience there, especially the expendables, the expendable children. And I don't believe any child is expendable. And, rather than, treating it as a matter of, transportation or exploitation, really what we need to do is classify that this area is an area where, massive amounts of crimes against humanity have occurred, both Jackal Island and Antarctica. So that's what that really is, crimes against humanity, and they know no bounds. Both of these facilities are also equipped with what I call pits of living dead. There's not really another words to describe it, but the one in Antarctica is, in my belief, the largest, where you have massive vats, cement vats built into the ground. And you just can't even fathom the, the closest thing I could probably use to describe it is if you think of industrial vats built into the ground that could go stories deep and wide. You have several of those there, and and they just keep, those that they mutilate and torture, they just keep throwing in there, and they survive until they die. And so really you have living and you have dead in there all together. And the only reason the ones that are living is, we won't even talk about it, but you can imagine where that goes, and it's quite a horrific thing. So these are the things now that, when we see this presentation of Lady Gaga, this is what she's going to be connected to. And, it was never their intention that Colonel Michael Aquino would not be in charge of these things. So, they're having to have somebody step up who, has been trained in that form of magic. And the question is she going to become a special trainer in this, in these forms of things, in these areas? So, without Aquino there overseeing those things, that very well may be exactly what they intend for her. And again, I'm going to smack a big fat label on her. This is crimes against humanity, in unimaginable proportions. So let's go ahead to the next one. The third place where you're going to find, a lot of training for the necromancy and the necrophilia is going to connect to the underground base, connected to the Finger Lakes out of the New York area. And, that's the area that you had Timothy M. Dolan connected to. And my concern as well is now you have his successor, Ronald Hicks, and is Hicks stepping into this? We're going to get into that decode next week, but I want to highlight that is my belief as to what we see happening, is that Hicks is stepping into that and has now just received the blessing of the Pope out of Chicago. Good old Pope Leo, part of your Northern Quadrant boys, all of them, studying under Timothy. Both Hicks and Leo studied under Timothy M. Dolan. So, the Pope is not just doing it because he's unaware. He's been putting into place new facilities, opening new areas where they're going to be having underground vampire clubs, like we talked about with the Sainthoods. They just now beautified another priest, which is going to get into, areas that they're focusing on building, more vampire underground, since they're vampire underground places. Some of them have been revealed. So I think they're trying to, make their way through with these new declarations and raise up people, to continue in their end time things and agendas. Go ahead to the next one. So here we have, Lady Gaga with Marina Abramovich and others participating in spirit cooking. And this is, you can't even imagine what these people do. And again, if you need to tune out for a moment, just tune out, because I'm not going to get too graphic, but I am going to describe what it is. This spirit cooking that they were doing, literally, they have a pregnant woman in the vat. The women do not live. They're consumed, but they're consumed with a child in their womb with the breast milk. That's the purpose of this vat and this spirit cooking. And, they think that this is, that they have the right to do this. But again, these are crimes against humanity. This is things that are evil and, forsaken by God. So, this is what Lady Gaga, some of the things that she was into. And I've talked in my affidavits about the Grand High Priestesses, Gloria Vanderbilt, Lori Cabot Kent, how they train the priestesses and the hierarchy children under them to do things like this, to consume flesh, and different ways of preparing it. And Biltmore was one of those places where they do such training. Go ahead to the next one. Let me go back just one. I want to say one more thing about Marina Abramovich in light of all this. She's highly connected to the Copenhagen area and has one of her exhibits at the Black Diamond Hotel there. But when you get into those areas and the Prague area, those areas have connection to some of their underground stored mummy armies. Gloria Vanderbilt was very big in the mummification. So I think that this is some of the interconnecting pieces, and there very well could be more underground reserves under that Black Diamond Hotel. And I believe that's why Marina is so centered in that Copenhagen area. You also have a high training area with some of the churches in that area where they're bringing Mormon children through who are being raised up to be, priests of Melchizedek, not the highest order in the system, but you get an order of your knights through the Royal Arch degree, through the Rosicrucians that will get into that order of Melchizedek. Eventually that road, if they go up higher, will lead them to becoming priests, your Knights of Pythias, which many of your Knights of Pythias are going to be positioned, as people with lots of money, connected to, universities, banks, businesses, and they're going to be connected to castles or mansions in the area, your antiquities, your artifacts, different things like that through the Priory of Zion. So you'll get a connection with your Knights of Pythias and the Priory of Zion. So that's very common. So I think that that's some of the interconnections with that. Go ahead to the next one then. So even things that we begin to see throughout this whole presentation and performance at the Grammys, things that are subtle, like some of it they want to present subtly, some of it they want to present in your face, but all subtle images of necromancy and necrophilia that can include, things that connect to, the processing of the dead, to your funeral homes, your morticians. So you see things like even in, what looks like it's just all these like little ties and, like her outfit there, all the staples, or, it's like meant to look like that image of a body being opened up, and, you've got these beautiful women that are sacrificed. And, it's just the beginning of that subtle imagery that's going to be displayed. Go ahead to the next one. Again, this one, you get into, the mad scientist looks, and, that connecting to the Jackal, the Hyde, the Jackal Islands, the duality, literally his words were "thought I was dead," and then or the songs with Tyler, the creator, "thought I was dead, like him, sugar on my tongue." Now, sugar on the tongue is going to be another reference for adreno, your psychosis adreno. So we've talked about how the adreno, they'll add hormones from the body, like the pineal gland, and blend that with the adreno, and that will cause these elite at their rituals or at the different things that they're doing to literally go psychotic. Both Jackal Island and Antarctica, I know I've said this several times here, but you cannot even imagine what these people do in those psychoses. I mean, it is just beyond anything. They throw on the classic music, they throw on creepy, music, and they just lose control of their bodies, their senses, any morality. It's just unthinkable. So, again, we're seeing things that, when they're going to be doing these things with the dead, they're going to be using you know, things that they've procured. They've stolen that blood. They've stolen those adrenal, you know, adrenal or pineal gland hormones from children. And that's what they call sugar on their tongue. Let's go ahead to the next one. You know, this is still just more scenes. He's showing like auto scenes here in the background. We see that upside down triangle again, connecting to abracadabra. There's this imagery is also going to connect to our next show today when we get into Bad Bunny's performance at the Super Bowl. But images like the tires, the cars, the rotation, the mechanic shops. Many of your older mechanic shops had connections where, you know, they would build like underground areas so the mechanic, you know, they could just drive the car in and work on it from underneath. So this is, again, imagery terms they're going to use, you know, working from things underneath. You know, it's meant to display, you know, something that like a dead body. We see, look at even the tires on the car. You've got the 5-pointed stars, which in the Brotherhood system, what does that represent? It represents your homosexual sex. Tire rotation is a term that they would use for changing sexual partners frequently. Tread is something that can represent, you know, it's a very crude word that they're going to use, you know, to refer to the usage of somebody sexually, you know, or their sexual desirability. Flat tire is something that can also be used as a sexual term. So, you know, you get just lots of things there. Poe, also Big Poe, even though it's an oil company, you know, oil, think about all the stuff we just saw coming down the pipeline with P. Diddy and the baby oil. Is this representing too, not just the sexual things, but how do they get the oil? How do they manufacture the oil? You know, it's not just plant-based, you know. Are they, you know, killing people to get this oil that they use in their parties, that they do different things with? You know, this is what they're going to be doing with it. And I would propose that it's not even, you know, we have to use the term the dead lightly, because the truth is that the majority of what they do is while these people are, and children and infants are still living. They live through the horror of their death until the very last moment, and then their bodies are grotesquely continued to be abused and mutilated, and, you know, used and manufactured. So there's a lot with this. St. Chroma, could that be an area? Could that be a company, you know, where things are going to be happening? I think that's, you know, some of the connections. They're, you know, establishing new areas. Go ahead to the next one. Bruno Mars and Rose, I don't know too much about. I haven't seen too much of their things. So in general, I have to say there wasn't much I could directly see that, you know, I question if he's kind of their extra. They're always going to have people that kind of, you know, aren't really, if they're in it, they're not high up, or they're not fully aware. They're just kind of brought in for the show. He may be one of those. However, let's go to the next one. There could be a connection. If there is, I see it in the next part of his performance and his attire, which gets into the soul. And this really, you know, this look, you know, which just looks like your Airbnb, your disco old looks, but this kind of could be connected to your vampirism. It also could be connected to your area. You have the high Creole population congregating in Louisiana. So, if they're declaring territories, that very well could be what he's declaring. We do see in the base set up kind of that imagery of the upside down V, which we know, the upside down chevron or V usually refers to females and represents the chalice. So that would be where I would see that if that is connected. Go ahead to the next one. Justin Bieber, he's just getting stripped. I mean, I don't know what else to say about that. Somebody should look up metallic stuff. There was a lot coming down the pipeline with metallic imagery and pink several years ago. That led to a very specific place where you had a lot of your current artists, as like Justin Bieber was coming into the scene, Nicki Minaj, all those people. Like, look back just a few years, you'll see a lot with the chrome and the pink, or kind of those type colorings. And they were highly connected to a Barbie. It's literally called the Barbie Airbnb. In that area where the Barbie Airbnb is in Florida, they have a whole underground massive market where they traffic children. So that is my guess. I am not somebody that believes Justin Bieber has come out. I don't believe Kanye West has fully come out. I believe he tried, and I don't believe Marilyn Manson has come out either. I think it's a shift in their imagery to draw people into a false gospel, to follow false Christ, and to receive a false Holy Spirit, the Kundalini spirit. So that's where all of that is going to connect to. My concern is that, knowing this is an area, a major holding ground in Florida, are they now also going to have it be a holding ground for the dead? And the things that they're going to do there is that possibility. So that whole underground area needs to be purged, is kind of what I believe. Go ahead to the next one. Somber Shimmers is another one. Again, I'm not sure, but you kind of have imagery of, again, the metal, the metallic look, the serpentine type look. I don't know enough about him or his connections or things to be able to say if this is a declaration, kind of where's the focus going to be. But, there very well could be. And some of the back connection with that is when you understand the territories, like under the Prague areas, the Copenhagen areas, when they have their areas that they build up in the image of their Messiah, which is, they're going to call those areas scorpion areas. So you have even Jackie Kennedy's, the Onassis Island, family island, which originally was called Scorpion Island, which we've talked about before, connecting to the imagery of the Messiah for the system. And so that serpent is often going to be an imagery. Now, when they begin to get into their Egyptian and their occultic magic with the dead, that is going to include serpents, particularly your Egyptian serpents. Many of these underground areas where they have the pits for the dead, they also have snake pits. And that's part of it. The mummies, the snakes, they go together. And they're going, some of the books where they're going to get that imagery or their underground layer formations from, like you'll get the 9 gates, some of the ancient Egyptian scripts. connecting to the gates of hell, which will include that image of serpents or serpentine spirits, which are under your Leviathan, some of them being water spirits, some being land spirits. But, you're talking ancient entities and gods that they're worshiping in connection with the dead. Go ahead to the next one. And, it was interesting how many awards some of the people got. I want to get into Kendrick Lamar here, and you had his performance with ZA. And go ahead to the next one. There were some interesting things here that come out that we'll get into Bad Bunny in the next episode, but just take note. I think we kind of mentioned last time his attire, the bow ties. Is he entering into a new position? What is that position? Is it connected to Grand High Priest? Is it connected to him stepping into Grand High Priesthood, but also stepping into one of the special councils of the system? You've had your UN being hit pretty hard. You've had a lot of individuals who are supposed to be in end time positions ending up dead or passing away. And so who's going to be in these special councils? Is he connecting to your Council of 21, which, is going to be, warlocks, high-level warlocks, grand high priests that are also known as the Black Tuxedos. Their specialty is to target areas, target Christians in areas, and you get a high population of Latinos in your Council of 21. That's very possible, and that's really where I think he's making his declarations. Go ahead to the next. So we see just some more imagery. We know Beyonce is the Grand High Priestess of the East who, stepped into Gloria Vanderbilt's position. So that would, put Marina, that would put Bad Bunny, that would put Lady Gaga, all having to work in connection with Beyonce in different territories, quadrants that are going to be considered Eastern quadrants. Let's go ahead to your next one. Billie Eilish, I don't think her connection is going to be to the councils, but we're seeing the tuxedos, the black and white. Is she going to be under some of these individuals? I think we're going to see her buddying up with some of them pretty quickly here, and we'll see who she's declaring herself under. I think we'll be surprised when we see that, but we'll see it. Go ahead to the next one. There was some things at the Grammys that were interesting. A lot of the $2 bills. I think this is going to connect to your 222 club. You get those that, 2 years old and younger are who they're targeting and who they're purchasing. We know George Clooney, is in the system. We know there's a connection with him and Barack Obama, the Phoenix of the Council. These people are just, they're having their meetings, they're having their gatherings, they're having their declarations, they're buying, they're bidding in. To get into the 22 club, usually it costs you $2 bills. So, that's what or a dice, with all twos on it, but they come up with creative ways. But it's a sign, it's a token, it's a way to get into the meeting, to get in, to the event, the club, and they're displaying who's getting in. Go ahead to another one. This is from Kendrick Lamar's Saw video that he was doing, and we just see some of the imagery in it. And why I want to point out this imagery is because within the system, you're getting, again, orders, circle groups. Some of those orders being connected to shapeshifters, those that, you know, like your protectors, the vampires, the wolves. You have also those that are bears or years, and you have those that are connected to the cats, the panthers. Your Black Panthers are going to be connected to your Black nobility within the Brotherhood and the Masonic systems. So this is some of this imagery. This is coming out of your Black nobility. And, you know, everything that you're seeing is revolving around those groups. Now, it's interesting with the riots we've just seen up in Minnesota that there have been reports now of the Black Panthers up in that area too. This is some of their look, their imagery, the red caps, the red berets, you know, all of that going to sovereign military, but also connecting to certain actual U.S. military groups, special forces. You know, you get your special colored berets, but some of them having that duality, not necessarily serving we the people. They're allegiant to the council, to their brotherhood vows, and to the system. You know, end time armies. Let's go ahead to the next one. You see just a little bit more of the panther imagery. You know, so I think that this is going to connect with things that we see coming up now. Is there a direct connection with him and those groups? Is he declaring, you know, that's what he's going to kind of be overseeing? Go ahead to the next one. This, you know, so in this, you can't quite see it too well in the picture, but in the four corners, there were women in these flowy pink dresses that look like feather dresses. And you get a couple images here. Your Black Panther groups are usually going to be under your Order of the Phoenix and your Order of the Temple of Solomon. They're going to be under the calendars, the altars, the constitutions connected to your Aztec, your Mayan, your Incan calendars. Some of your night groups can start out with the Order of the Polar Star, and then they're going to go to the Order of the Seraphim. Then they'll get into the Order of Mongolia. With your Order of Mongolia, you're going to get some of the colors that we see this woman laying in that go back to your African cultures, the yellows, the blacks, the reds, the oranges, the greens. And that's your female order that's going to connect to these colors and these images is going to be the Order of the Sphinx, high-level priestesses. So is this woman, you know, as well as the guy, is she being raised up in the Order of the Sphinx? We do have political leaders connected to this. We watch them outright publicly on TV display their scarves with these colors, and that was Nancy Pelosi and you know, other senators and House representatives that all bowed their knees with their scarves on, claiming it was for African culture, but really, you know, it was their declaration being parts of your Order of Mongolia and your Order of the Sphinx. Now, when you see the pink feathers, that gets into abductions. That's their code for trafficking. So, you know, this is concerning. You know, what's being handed over? What are the Black Panthers going to oversee? Have they been moving children from Minnesota areas? Where are those children being trafficked to now? I think this speaks currently as well as to the setting up of future routes. So just something to keep in mind. It's not just all by accident. Let's go to the next one. Or is that it? Was that the last one? That was it. So a lot, we're going to have more concerns as we get into the next episode today with Bad Bunny's Super Bowl performance.
I find I find the last image particularly, I mean, all of them, obviously, but what I want to just maybe before we end off, those obviously are colors that make up a lot of the African flags as well, those colors we saw. So it would also maybe speak to me on the fact that obviously Africa, and you mentioned the Black Panthers. I know there's been a lot of speculation as to whether they are around or still around or not. And that, as far as I understand, and correct me if I'm wrong, is the path or the wing or the lineage of the Brotherhood that has African people in it. So it's really that part of the Illuminati.
Non-African, but you get both. You know, their public face is going to be highly African. Their behind the scenes is, you know, going to be a lot of your, you know, non-African.
The normal puppet masters that are still puppeteering the same lineage. And that, as you say, is quite disturbing because especially I was going to ask you about the pink feathers if you didn't, or whatever that stuff was around there, because the way she's lying and just
it's
the way she's
pose, right?
Exactly. And then with the pink fluffiness makes you think about, obviously there's, in my mind anyway, there's something to do with sexual trafficking would be the only option for me.
And we saw that same thing in connection to the Olympics last year with Lady Gaga doing her presentation all with pink feathers in France. And so there's a connection with that also to the France area and Lady Gaga.
Wow, always France, right? France is really in the thick of things, aren't they? They're really
a lot of vampirism there.
Yeah, you know, exactly.
Vampirism and blood producers, you know.
And that would probably be why the areas in Canada, like Montreal, Quebec, are well known for the vampirism there. That's predominantly French, if I'm correct.
Your Moravian bloodlines, yeah.
Wow. Wow. Okay, lots here. I mean, but let's get on. We'll take a break for 45 minutes.